The old magics of the LPL. Now, this has slipped through the draft. We've seen a lot of our LPL junglers going back towards the tried and tested Lee Sin. It was banned away in that first game, as we were saying before. This now gives you a lot of ability to play through the early game, which EDG did not have in that last game. Now, the second problem with what EDG had was once it got through to mid and late game, what CC did you have to lock down priority targets, especially when it was scaling for scaling? FPX now considering their options on the other side. Are they going to buy into late game versus late game again? There is the option of something like the Xayah, the Zeri, both of which have been very powerful in the LPL. This would be a takeaway from Leave, even in that game, which was very hard to play out. Leave did about everything he could in his ability, so Lwx going to take that away.
Yeah, so we'll see where Leave is going to go without the Zeri. We've seen lots of different versions of Leave across the course of the split, where it's certainly not the only AD carry he's gone with, but behind Zeri, you got 12 picks on Zeri, and then there's 4 on Caitlyn, 4 on Lucian, 4 on Aphelios, 3 on Jhin. Like, and then there's a whole bunch of others on 2 and 1. Like, we've seen a lot of different versions of Leave, so I'm curious what the priority will be. Now that Lucian Nami hasn't been that same priority, and it looks like it will just be the mirror matchup with the Aphelios being hovered here for EDG.
Yeah, Aphelios can go alongside something like the Nautilus as well. I think the big thing about playing the Aphelios into the Zeri Lulu is that it gives you more support versatility. Because with the Zeri, you play typically something like the Lulu. That's kind of like your prime enchanter. You have a choice of Thresh, of Blitzcrank sometimes as well. We've seen a little bit of that into the Lulu. And of course, something like the Annie as well can pop up there. It leaves your options very, very open, and particularly for someone like Meiko, who was one of, actually, thinking about it, the original Annie support players way back in the day. It's actually really fun to see Meiko go back to this. One of the first... So I started watching League in Season 4. That was kind of the last kind of... the end of the heyday of Annie support. It lasted into Season 5, and that's when Meiko really started picking up a lot of this kind of picks. To see him pick it up 8 years later and still have great games on it, for me is a really historically kind of fun thing to see cropping back up again.
Yeah, I feel like that Annie support, kind of classic EDG, but also the Aphelios. It even has an EDG skin. I'm curious if Leave is going to run with Viper's skin here across this run. As Hacker goes to the Wukong once again, we've got a Kennen banned away from the top side as Ala, he just never gets his comfort picks.
No, and it's been... Look, LPL already played Kennen. It was already very strong. I'm of the opinion Kennen didn't need buffs because it was stupidly strong, particularly with players like Ala picking that up and having huge effects with it. And now it's just kind of pushed it over the edge. I think that pick will be in the bans for most of our teams. I think players that hadn't picked this champion up already absolutely should do after this point. It's a great Jax answer, it's a great Fiora answer, which is why both of them are both removed. And now we're looking at kind of like your secondary tier kind of strong top lane. Something like a Gnar is pretty fair weather. You don't have Red 5 counter pick for EDG this game. Might be important for them to keep something like a Gnar as a blind pickable option for Ala on the top side.
I'm curious what Coach Juicy has up his sleeves here. He outdrafted EDG in the first game of this series. He certainly will have arms up his sleeves, that is for sure. Elbows in there as well. But you've got your counter pick. You'd anticipate probably blind pick for the mid lane, right? The Syndra was banned away in the previous game, could be an option. But with the Yone gone, with the Assault gone.
You can flex pick. You can flex pick, so actually you can have the best of both worlds. You can just say, look, I'm going to pick in this Gragas. It's pretty okay into Annie mid if you flex that Annie towards the mid lane. So that means that EDG probably don't want to flex that there. We're talking about how Ala probably wants to put that Gnar towards that top side. It gives you the ability to blind pick now that you know that you potentially might have a counter pick coming in towards you. The last Gnar is harder to exploit than some of our other top laners in the meta champion pool right now. So I like that Gragas answer. It's a good answer into something like the Aphelios as well. You can kind of punt him into or out of the fight. We saw a lot of Vi Gragas combos before, doing very well against the Aphelios. With the Wukong, similar kind of idea. You want like this fairly high damage jungler getting on top of that AD carry, and of course it will be that Gnar going in for Ala. We've seen a lot of high impact Gnar games coming out in the last week, even Bin being one of the big players of that. I think it was Koi's top laner as well, doing very well. That's Syndra in the LEC. You can see this champion really getting ahead in some side lane roles. We haven't seen this champion for a little while, but AP does seem to be the name of the game for EDG. Something that can play around mid jungle with that Lee Sin. It's very important. So, Syndra locked in with that Lee Sin, high burst combo.
Yeah, I was very excited that they were hovering Zoe, but not today. The Syndra comes through for FoFo, incredibly powerful mid laner that if we see mispositioning from Lwx, you know that Syndra is one of those champions that will be able to punish it. But now the answer coming through from FPX, it looks like the Gragas will be going up to that top side in the end. And we'll see what Care wants to take to this mid lane. He managed to outdo FoFo in the previous game and goes for an Akali against the Syndra here for game 2.
We're talking about Care being a versatile player. First game of the Aurelion Sol in that first game. Goes back to one of his most played champions of the split, though. This will be the 6th game of Akali for Care in the mid lane. Does mean you have the Gragas into the Gnar top side. It's not the best matchup for the Gragas. You just kind of have to hold lane. Occasionally there are some burst combos you can do onto the mini Gnar with your jungler nearby, but on the whole, Ala, I'm expecting him later into the game to potentially even have some side lane threat. Could actually be a kind of game where Ala just kind of takes over the game from that side lane. FPX will have to do their best to stop that. Shroud, you can't use a lot of your point and clicks, he has a lot of mobility, and despite not necessarily getting wave control very early on, is very good once you hit later points in the game, even in a side lane situation as well. So Cap, a lot of safety afforded to him by that pick, which might be very important as the game goes on.
Certainly might be. There's a call taken in both AD carries inventories. We talked about Lwx versus Leave at the start of the day. But this game, I think our eyes have to go to the junglers, right? Jiejie versus Hacker. Hacker, a player that has been criticized a lot for his jungling across the course of this split. Jiejie, certainly in form right now, has that Lee Sin. He's got a lot of early presence. And I want to see him use that. I want to see him put pressure on FPX across the map.
Has the ability to do so. Of course, Lee Sin, the big buff coming in for them is Care. Is he going to get anything landed on him? No, not just yet. Trying to get the first right proc. Gets him with an auto, not the Q.
Hey, 3 gold, we take those.
Wow, yeah. I mean, something which I should talk about a little bit in other games. Sometimes getting an early mana float hand stack in matchups like this, particularly a Syndra where your early power has been diminished compared to what you used to before, can actually be quite important getting to the point where getting your mana flow completely stacked up, you get kind of mana dependency much less burdensome throughout the rest of that game. But FoFo going to have push in this early lane, going to have Jiejie on call as well. Lee Sin buffs with the 10% bonus AD kind of on both sides of that Q, really, really helping the champion come back into meta.
Absolutely, and Jiejie is certainly a player that is willing to flex his muscles on the Lee Sin. Interesting little mechanic I just saw from Meiko. Goes for a trade with Chocho right at the start of the game, starts shield. So his auto procs his spell thieves, and Chocho's auto procs Meiko's spell thieves as well, as the damage is returned from the Addy shield. So nice little level 1 trade there coming out from him. Not the end of the world, but just a nice little tech.
That's actually true. Actually, didn't really. That's actually a very good point. I have to see what happens with this bot lane ganks, though. FPX, they don't see this coming as it stands. Jiejie, early power, what can you do with it?
Flash forwards, Chocho in trouble. Has his own flash available, but not even going to think about using it. Knew he was going down. We wanted early action from Jiejie, and straight off of the bat, 2 minutes in, we get first blood.
I love it. First game. Nothing happening early game. Much more to be played with in game number 2 with this draft. Hacker, though, talk about these junglers being the threat.
Oh, no.
Low scat of the week now.
Yeah, FoFo perhaps a little over-aggressive with the scat of the week there. Hacker punishes, and that's a flash gone.
FoFo's going to take a splinter for him in rage. Say, I've hit you 2 abilities now. That'll give me some ability to scale up a little bit later into the game. Okay, going to land that E. And the stun's back up now, though. I'm sure we can follow that one through. Really hitting a lot of those stuns. But,
yeah, just blasting it on cooldown. Why not?
Yeah. The one you gotta have to with Syndra. I mean, again, for those of you that don't play as much Syndra nowadays, it's kind of like a mix between something like a Senna and a Victor, where you get abilities upgraded throughout the game. Doesn't have them right now. Might not need them on Cat. Lands the stun.
Oh, finds the stun, and there we go. Flash for flash in the mid lane. So both junglers with the opportunity to punish that.
Yeah, the first look at the 2v2 actually didn't come from the Lee Sin, because Jiejie was elsewhere on the map. Comes back into that point, though. A flash being down from Akali is not equal to a flash being down on Syndra. When it comes around to that level 6, Hacker with flash, Jiejie with flash, going to be returning to this lane. Almost certainly. Oh, they're returning right now, in fact. Again.
Oh, he finds it. He lands the Q. Should have vision as well, but here comes Hacker to get involved in the fight. Scatter weak, not available. Jiejie forced to flash. Okay, so 2 flashes for FPX for just the 1 of EDG.
Oh man, these teams were just so utterly bored of game 1's early game that they say, should we just put everything into the early game this time? absolutely a handshake on both these teams being very active this time. Only 4.5 minutes in, and we've seen multiple look-ins from these junglers who hit level 3 and immediately out onto the map. What this does mean, though, is that we don't have the same amount of kind of rigid vision control, I'm going to say. It's been a lot more opportunistic for both these teams. Maybe that we'll see whether that affects something like a very early dragon take. Early dragons, of course, been one of the hallmarks of the meta. They give you good stats, and of course, they give the ability to fight around those objectives later into the game, threaten early soul points.
I saw a really interesting thread from Molecule actually on Twitter talking about whether or not you should finish off a Dragon Soul if you have Cloud or Chemtech Soul on the map. If you're ahead, putting Elder Dragon on the map is almost always a bad thing because it's just a way that the enemy can come back in. He was talking about either delay taking it or just letting your enemy take it and you threaten Baron instead. Really intelligent idea. And I was going to bring it up in the previous game, but EDG kind of lost control of that game, so it never came into play. I'll be looking at that throughout the day, though, to see if we have anyone following in kind.
Yeah, Molecule is what you get when you have, like, a number of rare Atom fans in the same room. Like, they form into a big Molecule, by the way. Just in case anyone didn't know about that. Anyway, Molecule's a great person on Twitter. Really does investigate a lot of the stranger micro-interactions in League. You learn a lot through that kind of Twitter. Like, turns out you can actually pick up a Eye of the Herald by using a Hex Gate. That happened at the LCK, apparently. I have never seen that in my life. I have learned something today. Learning to see, though, what's going to happen with this Lee Sin a little bit later into the game. Does have a lot of that golden pocket. Lee Sin has a lot of buffs, of course, as we said, in recent patches as well. Jiejie is another player from EDG, which has started to return to old form. Couldn't really find a lot in that first game, though, but he's looking to see what he can do for his bot lane as the wave crashes.
Yeah, trying to get into that bottom side. It's not going to happen, but Cloud Drake, the first one up, as Ala going behind enemy lines. Not entirely sure why. Not even looking to proxy, just...
He has become Quinn behind enemy lines.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess so. Jiejie starting the Drake off, but not deciding to commit to that one, as EDG decide they need to get back in their lanes, force their way through.
Yeah. Flash is still down for these mid laners. Obviously a point of, I'm not going to say concern, but a point of interest. Maybe more concern for FoFo, because of course the Syndra, no other mobility in the kit. Hacker has not found a way to really get himself onto the kill board just yet. Not at his first item yet either. Very interested to see what's going to happen around this Herald. Most of the time, I can look at a draft. You can look at a draft and you can say, this team probably has the strongest top side when you don't have items when you got your first ultimates of the game. In this game, it's fairly even. Good Gragas cast can threaten someone like FoFo. A good Gnar ult can threaten pretty much anyone. Of course, Hacker and Jiejie, a lot of their own damage as well. So looking at the Herald, I think there is room for contest here.
Yeah, could certainly be space for it. I've just been watching that bottom lane and I feel like playing against Lwx Aphelios is like playing against a Misfortune, where you're just never allowed to stand behind the minion wave. Every single time, he's got an Infernum Auto ready to tap you with it. You can see Lwx just slowly but surely getting chipped away at in that bottom side. Really, really. It's just so impressive to watch lead laning as Lwx forced to cleanse.
Yeah, and this is why we're seeing much more of something like the Annie Aphelios lane. Annie's damage falls off as the game goes on, but in lane, it's still really annoying. And the Molten Shield giving shield and movement speed to Aphelios allows him to get up and do a lot more of that damage. Target acquisition, when he's got weird guns like this, can be a little lacking. Very low range. Molten Shield helps you get in range for it. So Leave, not on his Zeri. He's on the Aphelios, see what magic he can pull out from this champion as the game goes forward.
I have to see his Jiejie does get that Drake. 1-0 for EDG, but again, a very, very slow game, which is exactly what EDG like. This is EDG's wheelhouse. This is their bread and butter of how they play. And this time, they're not against an Aphelios that's just going to win the game by itself. This time, FPX will have to find a way to win these fights. And I'm looking towards Care. I'm looking towards Hacker. These two have a lot of playmaking ability. Now that they're both at that level 6 mark as well, we could see this Wukong try and get active on the map.
I think he kind of has to an extent as well. As you can see, FoFo and Leave, they've got significant CS advantages themselves. Hacker is still really the big go button for FPX. It's kind of the opposite of what EDG had last game. Stun lands, ease blown as well from Care. Does it just about... Minion block helps about that. I was wondering what was going to happen, whether we'd see a flash committed afterwards, because the Shuriken flip was cancelled out. Care would have had to blow flash to Meiko. Not feeling it at that point for Syndra. Less early damage than pre-rework. Definitely scales it better into the late game. Hacker's going to be spotted heading towards this bot side. Herald has not been contested by either of these teams. Instead, it's much more about keeping in those lanes, keeping that farm ticking, and making sure that Lwx can get some of those plates on bot side.
Yeah, Lwx managing to get one plate for himself. It leaves here to finish off that wave and deny any further gold. A very close early game so far. And I'm curious, Nymaera, how are we looking in terms of like overall scaling? Because I feel like both teams have elements of scaling. Both teams can play out these team fights, but I feel like FPX's composition a little bit more execution heavy. I'm going to hold that thought as 2v2 turning into a 3v2. But Hacker won't be able to make his way in.
No anti-ultimate, not really able to turn around anything there. Particularly without cleanse being available for Lwx's potential of a play coming through. Heal available for Chocho. It's a little hard to close down that play. EDG's mid jungle first to the play that because Care was just lacking behind. He might get caught out in a stun here.
Yeah, he could be in big trouble. Just goes for the blast cone. It means Jiejie can't get over the wall. Jumps over to FoFo. The rest of FPX are moving over. A great kick to deny Care's entry into the play. Meiko behind enemy lines, but I don't think he can commit to anything. Both teams playing close to a fight, but not willing to commit.
So let's get back to the conversation, because the fight doesn't land. Hacker? No, he's not going to do anything here. About what happens as the game goes late game. Scaling is a bit of a nebulous term. It can mean a lot of different things. On the whole, it means how likely are you to win as the game goes later. Some people take that as, if I'm hitting training dummies, who does the most damage? That's kind of weird to think about, because I think Zeri and Akali both have very good single target damage and AoE damage in different ways, right? Similar kind of thing with like the Syndra and the Aphelios. One thing which I think is going to be very important though is that if Syndra and Aphelios get to stand at range and fight front to back, I think EDG are happy to take down the first target. It's not like you've got like a Scion on that top side, which is very hard to kill going front to back. I think someone like a Gragas or Wukong can get blown up very, very quickly. On the other side, scaling Deo's out the window really if Akali starts nuking one of your carries.
FoFo getting rich off of these trades. He's got that first strike, managed to hit multiple targets with it there.
Splinters as well, actually. That's a good point. We can talk about that, because if Syndra starts to blow up the first target, we'll just talk about how that's important in late game. We normally expect the whole shebang of the upgrades coming through about level 15, level 16. That's kind of the timing point that it comes through. That's when you get yourself like a 15% HP execute on your ultimate. You get yourself like an extra 15%, or something like 10% on the ultimate. 15% extra AP. On top of that, as your last upgrade, though, as your passive effectively upgrades, you get yourself like half a death cap. The more you hit these early game combos, though, the faster you get to that point, and the faster that late game threat comes online for EDG. You bring that back to the conversation of scaling, that affects maybe how these fights will play out.
Nice little trade from Leaf there onto Lwx as he charges forward, has the red and white, and it means Lwx gets straight out of dodge. Does not want that scrap against Leaf. Vision cleared by EDG. There is still a ward for FPX. As you can see, Meiko trying to make sure that no lane gank can come on through. And we saw this in the previous game as well. Leaf stepping forwards to spot out if Hacker was trying to get into the lane. EDG's bottom lane so intelligently playing.
Yeah.
Much more intelligent than that sentence.
You're about to say, the last time we talked about intelligence, they got picked off immediately after that point, when LA tried to sideline that very last game. Terra's wandering down towards this bot side, and EDG do land the stun on the turret, but that's onto the clone. So that's not going to be as much damage as it looks like on your stream. These teams both, again, compared to, well, I mean, even in the last game we saw it a lot, right? But struggling to find that initial bit of CC, which actually leads to 100-0. It's very hard to finish off kills in this game, at least for this point in time. Maybe things change a little bit when you get around to grouped objectives and someone like Gragas or Gnar starts coming into the equation, but someone like just a Lee Sin, just a Wukong going forwards, harder for them to land a knockout punch against these kind of compositions.
Yeah, unless we get a big anti-stun followed up by Jiejie getting in there and managing to find his kick. It's going to be difficult, like you say, to find that follow-up. Ala getting in behind Xiaolahu here. He's going to miss a wave if he commits too hard to this trade. Looks like he will back away, favoring the minions in the end, but loses a couple of CS for that one. But in the meantime, EDG will be able to get their second trick.
Yeah, FPX don't want to get this up. Yeah, they don't want to give this up, FPX, because if you give up those two early dragons, we know what that means in terms of forcing them into fights. So it's going to be a fight towards the bot side of the map.
Turret is down for Aphelios. In goes Hacker.
Big engage.
Combo. Dragon already taken. Meiko surviving. 1 HP, and FoFo finishes the job as Leave is still going. He's onto Lwx here, and he's taken the kill. Jojo slowed down. Moonlight Vigil to finish the job, and Leave is taking over the fight. Hacker wants it, but it don't matter what he wants.
Leave doing so much damage, it breaks the map again as the next Rift loads. Chemtech Dragon onto the Rift. EDG, they get themselves the Dragon, and FPX, they don't find the engage that they need. They don't catch FoFo and Leave earlier enough. And those carries, they've already got enough damage to make FPX sweat. Not going to be nearly as easy to play out these 5v5s as that last game. FPX, they were really content to, they really weren't content to give up that Dragon. They almost get their dive combo off, but the dive combo is onto Meiko, and it's not onto FoFo and Leave. If those two are alive to do damage, the turnaround is insane. With rifle turrets as well for the Aphelios, gives you those auto-attack resets, stacking up chakrams, very high damage. We often talk a lot about the red-white, the Severin crescendum, but the green on top of it is incredibly powerful too as a combo.
And then Xiaolahu heading down to try and get involved in the fight, but he's just a little bit too late, and it means Ala also gets that free tower in the top side. Fantastic stuff for EDG, because not only are they getting a tower on the top side, not only did they get the Drake, they won a fight that was fundamentally a 4v5 in terms of map positions. And they win it with 4 kills.
It was kind of like a 1v0 and then a Xiaolahu somewhere else on the map, which meant it was just a straight 4v4 in the fight, but Xiaohu's not there responding. Good point in the macro.
Yeah, so EDG actually getting a tier 1 on the bottom side as well, building themselves a massive lead, 5,000 gold at the 16-minute mark. After how quiet most of this game has been as well, kind of insane to see EDG just blow this game wide open. Hacker trying to get himself a Grom. I think Ala might spot him. If we saw Meiko move over as well, this could be dangerous for Hacker. I think he's just going to have to back away. But EDG not interested, actually.
Now. Yeah, they're not interested because they're trying to just pin, I think they're trying to pin Zeri to the tower so they can't respond to something like bot lane. Jiejie has a lot of gold right now, by the way, folks.
Oh, Xiao, who actually forced to use his ultimate just to stay alive there, make sure that Jiejie can't kick him back into the loving arms of FoFo. Leave is going to try and dive in the mid lane. Hacker's here, though. The Gale Force not going to be enough, but Tibbers is! Oh my days! Where did he go?
Yeah, I mean, he just exits stage right, I guess. Hacker goes to the grey screen. Hacker's going to go for a bit of a
look at LWX's face at the bottom. He's like, what am I witnessing? Like, I mean,
oh my word.
It looked like a play for FPX. It looked like they were the ones making the play, but EDG, it was all just a cunning ruse. And that'll be the 3rd tier 1 taken. We always talk about how hard it is to break open that mid tier 1. Not for EDG this game.
Absolutely not. And now you have so much gold on this Aphelios. If this game is going to come down to, can FPX remove these carries with their single target burst of someone like the Akali and Wukong getting on top of that Aphelios, and Aphelios is super strong, that becomes that much more difficult. It's already difficult enough when Leaf feels bold enough to go up with the Molten Shield, and then of course the Severin as well, to get things into a very difficult scenario. The big game changer there is of course using the Severin ultimate for the extra healing, means that the kill combo much less notable from Hacker. Leaf comes back through, gonna start cycling through those weapons again. Which goes back to something that we talked about earlier, where you were saying actually, in that early laning phase, the Infernum being used to great effect by Leaf, at that point has the right weapons for the job. Weapon management is one of the big skills of Aphelios. Leaf once again an important moment, showing why it is so.
Yeah, showing his proficiency on the champion. And showing that this EDG squad, they don't panic when pressure is put on. Hacker trying to make a play there, but it's EDG that managed to turn it around. And we're already starting to get towards the 2-item mark here for Leaf. He's 3-0-3 this game. Jiejie 2-0-3 as well. These carries are massive. And the thing is, like, Jiejie not a traditional carry, but Lee Sin getting to 2 items significantly early, it makes him so difficult to deal with in a team fight. He gets so tanky. He still does massive damage just off of levels alone. Like, Jiejie is going to be a problem for FPX, and it's going to be so much threat onto Lwx. And it means EDG should be able to just pressure out these fights.
Like, it's the same kind of logic to say, with something like Lucian Nami, we've seen an awful lot in this season. The Nami getting early gold to get to an important first item is actually quite a big thing, despite them not really having the same impact with second and third items. But something like that, Lee Sin, getting to first item, that Gore Drinker, the Black Cleaver, and second item, which will be coming in soon, I have to imagine, can be big for these mid-game fights. Care on a bit of his own side quest right now. Not spotted on vision. Leave is left alone on this backside. Remember, Care, big opportunity for him to get engaged top side. Here we go.
Hacker goes in. Care straight onto Leave. Gets the shuriken, and Leave is gone. Care once again making fights happen for FPX. Perfect execution into the backline, stunned up, and the rest of the team dives on in. Ala did get a flank of his own though, so it's the 3v3. Gnar in place. Scatter the weak there. Jiejie lands the kill to Xiaolahu, but he doesn't commit. He doesn't commit. He W's too early. Ala the one to try and get these kills now. Is Jiejie low on HP and Care back into the fray once more. Jiejie somehow survives it. A double kill for Ala. How the hell have EDG done this? It's unbelievable team fighting from the first place team in the LPL.
They were not allowed to team fight like this in game 1, but game 2, give them an inch, they'll take the whole damn arm. Ripped out of the socket. FPX, we thought they'd done it. They thought that they managed to take out this hugely fat Aphelios. That should have been enough, but it wasn't. Really want to see what happens on the top side of that fight after Aphelios goes down on the bottom half of it. This is kind of what we were talking about FPX. It's very important for them to get on top of the Aphelios. This is where the team fights are decided. Can you take out the carries before they do enough damage? Aphelios goes down, but not before putting out the Mega Inferno Bomb. Puts out that huge AoE ultimate. And that is enough to just give the execute damage a bit more threat. Give Ale some room to maneuver. Jiejie tries to play a bit of a mind game here, tries to outplay a body slam, which could have led into a kill onto himself, but instead just kind of gives up the opportunity to kill Xiaolahu. Cleanup, though, is absolutely insane. Just double digits of HP determining the win and loss in this back end of the fight.
Absolutely insane stuff coming out from FoFo and Jiejie. And remember, this is a new duo, this split. These are not players that had played together before. But with fighting like that, you wouldn't believe it, would you? Herald down in the top side now is Xiaolahu trying to get onto a flank position, but he's spotted out by Jiejie as the Herald will charge on in. Care once again on a miracle flank. This time, Ala, other side of the map, does have TP and will start channeling it. But Hacker's basically already dead. Meiko surviving for the time being as Ala dives in, but Lwx is caught and taken out already. This time, Leave not threatened by the Akali. A double kill for him. And Care, he's got to make something magical happen, but just has to flee into the base.
There's no dragon to save you this time, Phoenix. And neither is Care able to take down the enemy AD carry. Last fight, as much as it was an EDG win, it started in what should have been a best case scenario for FPX. AD carry immediately dying for EDG. They can't match that this time. And now with 4 members alive, the only one dying being Meiko on the Annie. Plenty of damage to take down this Baron. That will start tiding them over into a good set of waves pushing in to then secure themselves a soul later on if they so wish. 3 minutes on that dragon. EDG have the entire run of the map, the entire run of this game.
And it feels like, you know, a valiant effort for Care here, but the fact that Hacker goes in, again, they start these combos onto Meiko. His Leave has so much freedom.
But, like, the timing is just off, and with Xiaolahu committing the ult to an Annie that's used everything, the value of the teleport and the ultimate is greatly diminished at this point. If that fight had happened, you know, 5 seconds later when Care could actually join that fight, if Xiaolahu could actually get something onto Leave instead of onto the, you know, the basically useless Annie after that point, maybe that fight works out a little bit better. But fight's done and dusted now. He's staring down Barrett, staring down so much gold on the carries. FoFo still doing significant damage, even to Xiaolahu, with all those tankiness on that top side of the map. There's an objective bounty taken in by Care, but this is just so bad for FPX.
I tell you what as well, when we talk about Zeri versus Aphelios, it's kind of the battle of the late game carries. If there's one thing Aphelios undoubtedly beats Zeri at, it's sieging. Look how fast he shredded through these towers. There were 2 minions under that mid tower, and half of its HP is gone now, just off of that turret coming out from Leave and just getting a couple of autos in. Hacker up on the top side. Leave could be in trouble here. Does have Gale Force stuff, has flash. And there's just no follow-up. There we go, Cyclone down. That's everything FPX have to start a fight.
Yeah, Leave pops the heal, and he's done with it at that point. At this point, you have to be super careful with the turnaround. It's not the highest DPS weapons, but the burst from the Inferno, very high. Care caught on the spot side, has to force the ult to flash out to get out as well. FPX losing tools for imprecise engagements.
I mean, this is excruciating for FPX. They are just being slowly but surely suffocated out of this game. And Ala, I feel like he's having more impact as Mini-Nav than Mega this game, as he just goes toe-to-toe with Lwx. He is an AD carry too, and he sure as hell ain't afraid to show it. One inhib down in the mid lane, looking for bottom inhib as well. And remember, that top tower is paper. The Xiaolao who just annihilated an EDG. In 25 minutes, they have shown us why they are the first place team in the league. FPX managed to show them something special in game number 1, and they are repaying in kind. Leave wanted a little bit more with his Infernum, but it's not gonna matter. The Gravitum to keep them on the fountain. They try for one last ditch effort, but Lee flashes out and just shreds the health bars instead. The Nexus falls, and EDG remind us why they are in first place.
Game 1, hopefully just a blip on the radar for EDG, their fans. If they were to win this series, it really does put a huge stake to their claim to first place in the LPL in this entire region. And with this roster as well, especially compared to some of the great super teams that have been built up this year, if EDG were to finish in first place by managing to really get the most out of a series like this, it would be absolutely huge for this team.
Yeah, it'd be massive. It'd be I mean, for EDG, they are well and truly on the way to securing first place. And that first game did make me a little bit nervous, but game number 2 clearly rearranging things. And it seems like just banning out Care is the way forwards, because the Akali couldn't have the same impact this game. And even in that fight, where Care did manage to have that individual impact, did manage to find Leave, the rest of EDG are just so good. The team, I mean, that play from FoFo and Jiejie to stop Care taking over, to stop him finishing everyone off while Ala just runs around the red buff and sweeps everyone else up. That was just mind-blowing team play coming out from EDG.
Yeah, and this is what happens when FPX don't have that crushing draft win. Going into game 3, they're going to have to pull out some more of their magic. We know that apparently they have been doing very, very well in scrims, and they've been trialing some new different champions, stuff like the Veigar bot. Now we've seen the Aurelion Soul as well. Do they have anything left in that tank? Can they use it to secure a series victory over the top of the table?
That's going to be the question. We'll have to wait and see for game number 3. But, I mean, all things considered, still a very entertaining game. And I feel like EDG are one of these teams where, I say this about some other top teams as well, but EDG, when you're watching them, quite often, the first few minutes are fairly slow. We'll see a gank or two, but generally speaking, they're just looking to play it slow and steady until they hit a certain point. And that point depends on the composition, but the second that win condition is online, they just decimate people. We went in this game from a basically level game to a 5,000 gold lead in the space of about a minute. It's just absurd to witness.
Yeah. Do you know the history of the word decimation, Munch? It's a very interesting word, because what it was a punishment for running away from battle in Roman legions. What I will say about this game, at least no one was running. I do appreciate that from FPX, because they knew that they had to commit onto the carries, and they did try it, but EDG, I think what we've seen from the first 2 games is that both of these teams understand where the game is going to be decided, and that, for me, that level of higher level game understanding is really impressive to watch. Because again, the FPX, they're a team that's out of playoffs. They're towards the bottom of the table. But then you can look up against EDG and they just sat there saying, yeah, we don't care if somehow we lose our AD carry in the start of it. We actually have ways to clean up as well. EDG, a very, very good team, reassessing team fights as they're halfway through.
Yeah, absolutely incredible team fighting. Like you say, being able to assess where and how they can move forward from it and just changing things up. And also, Leave, one of the best players in the league at levying an advantage. Like, these team fights, he's so aggressive on the Aphelios, and I love witnessing every single second of it. We're going to game 3, and we'll see if FPX have more draft shenanigans up their sleeves, because if it's an even game, I don't know if they could take out EDG in the third one. We'll have to wait and see after the break.